If I say damn it or something, you'll take that out.
Isolated in San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz creates a strange curiosity in people. They come from all over the world to take the short boat ride, which will enable them to walk on the same ground associated with the mysterious world of crime. But what would it have been like to live there, especially as a teenager? Well, you're about to find out.
I am Molly Decker, and I am 80 years old.
My name is Betty Vickery.
We had heard of Alcatraz, but had never dreamed that we would go there. And they closed the disciplinary barracks at Fort Leavenworth and transferred all the prisoners and the guards and the families to Alcatraz.
I was 13.
I was 14.
Oh, I was very excited because we had known nothing but Fort Leavenworth, Kansas.
And I had never seen the ocean, and I did not even know what to expect.
And so when we got the news, we all got packed up, and you should have seen the car. It had the running boards with the cases on each side, you know, and all of us were in the car, and the prisoners had made us a little box for a canary bird. We didn't want to leave our canary. So they had made us a little box to put the canary in, so all of us 5 children were there with this little box, and my mother and father in this car.
We came out on the old Route 66.
And Anita hadn't been very well. She had some kind of kidney disorder. She had to just eat sardines. I don't know why, but that was a prescribed medication for her. So they were in a gunny sack, cans and cans of sardines. Well, they hit the ground, and the burlap bag broke. And here's cans of sardines strung across states for miles. And the people, we were traveling in a pair, and the people in back of us kept honking the horn. So we just turned around and waved at them, you know, and had a wonderful time. We didn't know why they were honking, but it was the sardines that were scattered all over the states.
We came with 2 other families, and we drove. That was 1929. We drove in this Chevrolet, and they wore their uniforms because they felt they would be safer. People didn't travel like that in those days. And then every little town we stopped in, they thought that somebody was putting on a parade.
And we'd get up so early in the morning to start out. And you know, at that time we were driving maybe 35 miles an hour. And it took us 8 days to get here from Kansas. But it was fun. We enjoyed it.
We saw the ocean when we hit Los Angeles.
And the first motel we saw was in Santa Barbara. And we were so excited because we had stayed in some really crummy places. But we had a motel there in Santa Barbara, and it was just divine.
When we first arrived, we didn't go right to Alcatraz. We went to Angel Island, which is the big island in back of Alcatraz.
That's where our first station was.
And then we were there for about 6 months, and then my dad was transferred to Alcatraz at that time.
And you know, I loved it because in Fort Leavenworth, and where we lived, there were no concrete sidewalks. And we got there, and it was concrete, and at night we could see the lights in San Francisco, and the Ghirardelli sign from Ghirardelli Chocolate was all, I thought that was gorgeous. Just beautiful. All those lights shining on the water was wonderful. I was just so pleased that we had moved. I really was, because we'd lived a really a sort of a very protective life, and were set in one place. The whole world opened up. We could see the whole world. At least I thought it was the whole world when we moved there and saw the lights in San Francisco, and it was exciting.
Yes, we were very excited.
I'll tell you, the quarters were wonderful. I mean, they were big. We had 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, which was wonderful. We'd never had 2 bathrooms. So with everyone, you know, all of us, it was great. And we had 4 bedrooms and 2 baths, and a kitchen and a dining room and a parlor and a living room. And my mother cooked by a coal stove. The whole island was all coal. There was nothing else there. But it was, I really enjoyed it because, especially at night, as I say, I love the lights. And we go out and we walk around the island and see all of Oakland and Tiburon and Sausalito, and I just thought it was a wonderland. I really did.
Every Sunday we caught the boat and we went to Sunday school in San Francisco. And they did have church on the island, but usually just for the prisoners. We didn't go.
We were allowed to go to any school that we wanted to. My mother chose one that was up in Pacific Heights.
I came from a school of about 200, and this Galileo was over 2,000. So that was quite a change for me.
At 13, you're not very impressed with a lot of things. You know, it's just your daily life. My dad was stationed there, and this was our life. And so I really didn't think that. But it was fun. It was great fun going back and forth on the boat. It really was, because at times we took the launch, which was much smaller.
Every day we rode the boat over in the morning and then came home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was a wonderful opportunity to do homework.
Well, no, I don't think we ever used that as an excuse. We just participated in what we could. I know I was drama editor of the yearbook and took newspaper writing and all that sort of thing. And our boat didn't leave until 4 o'clock, and school was out at 3:10. So we had that time, 50 minutes, to make up anything that we wanted to in the newsroom and all that. And then the dances we had at school, we always attended the dances because they were after school, right after school. So we would dance until it was about 5 minutes of 4 and make a run for the boat.
Anything that would take up time, like chorus and so forth, I couldn't do. However, I was on I was one of the editors for the yearbook. I also helped with the little student paper we had. But that was done during the school time. It wasn't after hours, so that worked. You had to ask.
How was that?
You know, what? How does your boyfriend get you home?
And also, too,
He didn't bring me to the door. No, I certainly did date, but there was a boat that left at 10 and one at 12, and oftentimes, of course, we would go to the movies in San Francisco or go out and have dinner.
Molly and I, we went to the Methodist Church up on Larkin, Clay and Larkin, and one night we went to a party there, and church party, and all of a sudden Molly looked at her watch and she says, "Oh," she said, "we've got to leave." So we went out and we managed to catch the streetcar down to the foot of Van Ness. We had to run. It was about 3 minutes of 10, and the boat left at 10 o'clock.
We had to catch the boat. That was law at our house, and no excuses. And we always managed to do that.
Well, it had been raining, and I fell, and I had mud. I just sprawled in the mud. We got down there, the boat was pulling out, and there was no 12 o'clock boat that night. So the fellow said, "Just jump through the freight hatch." So we jumped on the freight, they grabbed us. We went upstairs to the cabin, and there were about 20 people in there, you know, going to Alcatraz or Angel Island. "Where have you been?" Well, I was at a church party." "Oh, yes, you were." I was covered with mud. We could have had guests every Saturday and Sunday, but you know, that gets a little tiresome for Mama. So she wasn't too pleased with that. We had a big party for a group, and of course everyone was very envious, you know, not being invited. And I had a party crasher, which really upset me, because she kept begging, "Please let me come to your party." I said, "There's only so many invitations, and I don't have one for you." And she crashed the party, and I was very upset about that. But then there was another party that my mother and father gave for Steve's mother and dad for their first wedding anniversary. And Anita looked absolutely beautiful. My mother had made her a black satin dress and a long dress, and the party was wonderful. And we didn't know it at the time, but she was 5 months pregnant with Pat. But it was, she had a wonderful time. I can see her yet dancing the night away. I was trying to think last night how many were there, and maybe 12 or 14, not very many.
I believe there were about 15 of us.
That's nice.
All age groups.
We weren't really friends with the kids on the islands very much. Well, our friends were in school.
Friends would come over and we'd take them to the prison, and of course they were thrilled to be able to do that. And then underneath the prison are dungeons. And we, for special friends, my dad would get us down there in the dungeons, and then he would turn the lights out. Well, that was Grandpa.
He would have it timed just right, I guess, with the guards when we got down there with all of our friends and everything to turn the lights out. Well, it was pitch black down there.
And they're very, very dark, believe me.
And I was scared to death. I really was every time.
Someone would be with us, of course, one of the guards, and we would walk slowly through. But it was very impressive, especially for our visitors who didn't even dream they were there.
It had a dirt floor. It was just, it was nothing down there, just some cells and things like that, but that was all. But they wanted to go down there, and they would take them. And when we walked through the prison, he would blow a whistle, and all the prisoners in their cells had to turn and face the wall. They could not look out at anyone going through.
And I'm sure that we were admired, but at a discreet distance. It wasn't anything that was a heavy burden for us.
Oh, they would talk about it for weeks.
I think everybody was pretty thrilled to be invited over. They enjoyed it.
And tell everybody else, and of course everybody else wanted to come. And as I say, Mama just said, no, 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 no. Too many.
I think the worst thing that we ever faced all the time was the wind. The wind is terrible. And then, in spite of seeing the Birdman of Alcatraz, that was not filmed there. Well, some of it was, I'm sure, but not most of it. And because there's no birds, the wind is too strong. The only things we saw were seagulls and pelicans. We could walk around the island, and it is 12 acres. And we could walk around in a very short length of time, and which we really did quite often because there's really nothing to do out there.
We used to roller skate a lot on the parade ground, and Molly would get up early and play tennis.
At 5 o'clock in the morning, we'd get up and play tennis because that was the only time we could do it.
The wind was just unbelievable.
There were days when you could actually lean into the wind and you wouldn't fall over. I think it's worse there than any place in San Francisco. This sounds wild, but Betty Lou and I were talking about this. There was a rope that hung down close to where the laundry was, and we found it, and we would
go down to the beach, rappel down to the beach, and then back up.
If it had ever broken, nobody would have even known where we were, and we knew we shouldn't do that, but we did.
It was on a Sunday. Molly and I decided we'd go for a walk, and so we decided to go down to the beach, and we got on the rope, and rappelled down, and just as Molly went first, and just as I got down there, this prisoner came around from behind a rock. And now this is on a Sunday afternoon. And where he came from or how he got there, I don't know. But he saw us, and I'm so glad we were together, the two of us. But then he didn't say anything. He just went over and got the rope and went back up. Now, whether he was trying to escape or what, but it was very strange to me because they had to be accounted for. And where he came from, I have no idea. It scared me for a moment. But then it was okay because he didn't touch us.
It was boring to a degree because, after all, you're a teenager, and life is boring when you're a teenager.
It's amazing how fast the time went by because it was an adventure every day going back and forth, and like the fleet coming in, the battleships and all that sort of thing. It was just a wonderland to me. It really was. I didn't feel, I would say, disconnected from anything. It was all there for me.
One thing I was always sure of, I was never going to go to prison. We had a wonderful library in the prison. We had to go into the prison to go to the library.
Well, we'd go up there, and the one librarian, Williams, he came with us from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And he was in for life, and then he was a librarian there on Alcatraz.
And there was these two young prisoners worked there, and they were great help for us to look up homework and so forth. And in fact, we got to be, very good friends. But they were in there for a minor infraction, it wasn't anything really serious.
We'd tell them what we wanted, and they'd do the research for us. And all we had to do is just go up and collect it. It was great.
If we couldn't find a certain reference book, then they would spend all day long looking for it, and we'd go up after school, and they'd have it all ready for us.
They were very caring. They really were. And Williams was the one that when we were little at Fort Leavenworth and we'd fall and skin our knees, he was at the gate there where there was a small gate to let people in, a large gate to let the trucks in. And we'd fall and skin our knees and we'd go over there and Williams would take us in and wipe everything off, you know, and put iodine on it for us and see if we had to go back to the hospital. And then he, when Alcatraz was disbanded then, he left for Fort Jay, New York, for the prison there. And I can see him yet. We were allowed to go on the boat with the prisoners over to Oakland so they could catch the train. And he turned around and just went, kissed us goodbye. You know, I think about it now.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, that's sweet. It's bringing tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
That's very sweet. And let me ask you too, how's that going? What was this this kind gentleman in there for?
He was in for murder, in for life. He
And-
had killed his wife.
Did that ever make you scared? To
Oh no, oh no.
We never really had any fear of them at all.
He was so kind. You know, we were just little kids and he was so kind to us.
We had bowling alley, and we could go bowling anytime we wanted to, and the prisoners were the pin setters. In those days, we didn't have the mechanics, and they had to set the pins up.
And I know in Alcatraz, even at Fort Leavenworth, they used to have the shows there that the prisoners put on, and we would go and see them.
The first run movies instead of going to San Francisco, they were brought to Alcatraz first. And they had a section reserved for the dependents that we could sit when the prisoners were there.
They would all sit in the middle, and then we sat on this side, and the aisle was about that wide. So I would sit here, and there were the prisoners sitting here. We were right there. And there would be perhaps 100 prisoners in there.
And then we would watch the movies. And then on, I believe it was on Sunday nights, they used to have like little vaudeville teams come over and put on a real show.
And there's one lady, she came over, and of all the songs to sing, she got up and sang, if I had the wings of an angel over these prison walls, I would fly to the arms of my darling, and there I'd be willing to die. Well, it just brought so much laughter from the prisoners. They were hysterical. But she just didn't give up. She kept right on going.
No, it wasn't strange because we had lived next to prisoners before at Leavenworth, and so it wasn't anything to us that we were in that close proximity to the prisoners.
And then they used to have fights there too, you know. We weren't allowed to go. They had to have what they call stag fights, and they would bring people over from San Francisco, civilians, and they could come to the fights. And they were grudge fights among the prisoners there, and they would stage those in the mess hall.
It became a federal prison when we left.
It changed completely from night to day. It was all the difference in the world. And it really, that's what spoiled it for me, was the fact that who could, you know, come in, even the prison, to bring it and change it into something so violent when it hadn't been. And the prisoners respected the guards, the military guards, and the military guards respected them. It was discipline. They don't have that now, and they didn't have it when the federal moved in either. And that's what I miss, was the standard of living. It's all changed.
They destroyed the housing that we lived in. That was one of the first things they tore down, and we were disappointed in that.
On the wall there, we had ice plant, and it was purple. And we used to call it our purple carpet because it hung down all the way down to the water. And it was bloomed, you know, it was gorgeous. So a purple carpet on Alcatraz. But they took all that down, and it lost its tranquility, I will say.
Yeah, the sirens would go off. But we were used to that already. They did that at Leavenworth, and we'd hear the siren go, and we'd know someone had tried it again.
Dad phoned my mother from the prison and said there had been an escape, and please, we never locked our doors, but to please lock the doors because nobody knew where they were, and they didn't. Had they gone in the water? Hadn't they? Was that just a ruse, or what was it? But he called her and told her to lock the doors, and she did, and they finally decided that they had escaped.
Several of them had the bright idea of putting lard on their bodies.
And removed their clothes and smeared Crisco all over themselves. And of course, I don't think they ever made it because the water was cold and the tide was going out.
Well, we always just felt sorry because we knew they wouldn't make it. And we couldn't understand why they thought they could, because they had been in prison, you know, for maybe 2 or 3 years, and they had not gone into the water in all that time, and we just felt like that it was a bad plan. Mm-hmm.
Dad finally called about a couple hours later and said that they had searched the island from top to bottom and they were not there. So, and you know, there wasn't that much to search. And they had the launch going around, you know.
Some of them were found, but I think there were about 3 of them. They never did hear from them again.
There was a girl, Anastasia Scott, who swam. She was our neighbor, who swam from Alcatraz to San Francisco. However, she had it timed just right. So as she swam, halfway over, the tide was going out, and then halfway over, the tide was coming back in, so it brought her back in. So she did make it.
The trustees did all of our yard work, and they delivered the ice, and they took our laundry, because there's no laundry facilities in the housing at that time. And all of the sheets and everything, we just turned them in, and they'd bring us clean sets.
And the rest of the people, they all had cooks and everything. I doubt if my father would have let anybody come in and cook or clean, because he had Mama, and nobody could do it quite like Mama.
The prisoners delivered all of our groceries. There was nothing on the island as far as buying food. We had to call San Francisco. They had trucks that brought the food down, and they would be in big boxes, and then the prisoners would put it on their trucks, and it would be marked with their names, and they would deliver to all the houses on the island. Well, this may sound strange, but the doctor's office was in the prison, and if there was anything wrong with us, we had to go to the prison to be treated. The dentist's office was there, and I remember when we had to take shots when we went to Hawaii, and we all went up on the 3rd tier in the cell block, and that's where they gave shots. And my youngest sister got scared and broke away, and she ran all over the prison. The prisoners were chasing her. She was so frightened.
How did you guys get her?
Well, finally somebody got in front of her, because she was only, about 7.
So there was obviously then some concern that she was afraid of being in there.
No, she was afraid of the shot.
Oh.
As we were walking up the way, why the park police, or whatever, what are they called?
The Rangers.
Rangers. He would ask me, because someone had said, you know, I had lived there, and he would ask me, what's this building and what's that building? And I would say, well, that was our post exchange, and, you know, and our commissary and all that sort of thing. And he said, yes, that's right. I said, yes, I know it is. I was so hurt to see all the damage that the Indians had done to the island. I really was. Why did they do that? They just ruined everything. That gorgeous lighthouse.
And they burned, we still call it Colonel Weeks' house, and they burned his house down, and they destroyed so much. And if they were going to occupy, they should have done it in a more decent, civilized manner, to me.
They just destroyed everything.
I feel hurt that these things have happened over there, because it was really, we had a very pleasant life. And I think even the families of the federal guards enjoyed it. It wasn't as restrictive as most people think it was. It was quite an enjoyable life.
I think I'm more understanding than a lot of people, and I never expect anything from anybody. Whenever I get anything, it's always a wonderful surprise. I have a strange outlook on life. I live every day, do my best, and do my best for everybody else.
Any opportunity, I would go back. It was just part of my life that I know is probably unusual, and it was the life that I really enjoyed.